Today we're talking about faith-based anxiety relief. I don't know if that's a term or if it's just saying that people who have anxiety who also believe in God and are trying to reconcile their anxiety, then it's faith-based. That's what we'll say. And, the one question that I think can really stop all the overthinking and this process that can kind of get us all worked up in our anxiety and our anxious thoughts, our worries, is something that I want to share with you in this video today. It's definitely helped me, and I hope that it will help you too. So let's get into it.
This is the Balance Journey, where we're all about turning challenges into growth opportunities and bringing mindfulness to everyday life.
So I think all of us have had moments where, we're doing fine during the day and then you lie down and go to sleep at night and then your brain starts going and you think about, worries about your kids or worries about money or whatever it is. We all have the things that we can manage throughout the day maybe, and then when it gets quiet, we start to spin up. Or we really want something very badly and we think, oh, but what if I don't get it, and that just worries us to death. All of these types of things, I think, whether you believe in God or you don't, it's the natural process of the unknown and being a person, I think, who is pretty much a go-getter. And so you're like, okay, well, maybe if I just figure out what I need to do, then okay, I can get it done and I'll be able to mitigate any problems and I'll make it work. So that's definitely something that I've always done in wanting to address my worries and do my best, like, okay, well, let me do the research. Let me find out as much as I can find out. Let me see what I can accomplish and let me see how I can pave the way. And I think all of those things are very, very good. And I'm sure you're doing a lot of them already. But if you clicked on this video and you're looking at this idea of anxiety relief in a faith-based manner, then I want to share with you this one question that I asked myself about 30 years ago when my husband, who was at the time an active duty soldier, was for the first time deployed to a war zone. And I was a young mother, had all 4 of our kids by that time. And literally, we got the call that it was very cryptic because it was a top secret type of thing, and you weren't supposed to say too much. All he could say was, okay, I'm supposed to be going in. They're pulling all of us in. It was a weekend. We need to go in and find out what's going on. And then he called me and he said, okay, yeah, I need you to go get those things I told you to get. And it was like this shopping list of things because we had kind of talked on the ride back to the Army base that, okay, this is, if this is what we think it is, then can you please get me some things that I'm going to need because I'm probably going to be deploying. And when all of that was happening, you're just in the mode of, okay, got to get this done, got to get that done. And it was definitely a doom and gloom in our lives, all of the kids and myself and my husband and, all of the neighborhood, because we were all kind of affected. But you focus on what needs to get done. So it wasn't until he was gone for a while, and this was in the days when everybody didn't have a cell phone yet. We didn't have those apps that you can be in touch with your loved one long distance without paying any money. We had to wait for phone calls that came to a landline, and it was, if you missed it, you missed it. So everybody had to hunker down into this, okay, this is life for a while. And I remember mowing the yard because that was one of the things that I had to do while he was gone. I was like, okay, this is how you start the mower, because I'm a city girl and I had never done that in Hawaii when I was growing up because we always lived in like a condominium type of situation. So here I am, I'm getting things done, but I remember mowing the yard and up and down. I've got the baby in the playpen so I can keep an eye on him, and the others are playing in the house. And I was thinking, what if something happens? What if he doesn't come back? And I mean, my mind was going and going and going and going. And we all have that, right? Whatever your situation is, your mind goes and goes and goes and goes. Maybe it pauses because you get focused on something and you need to accomplish it, but then it comes back. And when we don't know what we don't know, then yeah, that can become a huge spiral. I never would say that I got to that point, but that's because for me, what I did was I asked the one question: what if it does happen? What if the worst does happen? So I think a lot of people, when they're getting ramped up with anxiety, they're saying, oh, I can't let that happen. So what will I do? What will I do? What will I do? And maybe that's a huge part of the anxiety, because that part is not in our control. So when I said, well, what if he doesn't come back? What if he dies while he's over there? He was in a combat zone. I didn't know. None of us knew. And I said that question in my mind, because I felt like I was kind of just talking to God, kind of just running it through my psyche, and I'm just like, okay, well, what if it does happen? What if the worst does happen? And you know what? For me, and I hope for you too, when you ask yourself that question, you're identifying what the worst is. What is the worst? Okay, so for me, the worst was, that would have been the beginning of other things that would have been a problem. But the worst was, okay, he's no longer with us. We have to figure this out now in a new way. But as soon as I said that, I felt like I was able to direct my thinking, direct where I was headed with my all this anxious thoughts, and this track that I was on. I was able to direct it. Okay, well, what would I do? And even though I said, well, would I stay here? Obviously, eventually, the remains come home, you've got to lay them to rest, but then what, right? So I was just thinking it through, and I don't know, that probably sounds really morbid, but I was just saying, look, this is what I'm so afraid of. What if it does happen? And by doing so, I was able to start asking those questions. Okay, well, if he doesn't come home, would I go back to Hawaii? Would I live here? And I found a settledness for myself in making some guesses about what I thought I probably would do. None of that ever came to pass. And if it would have, I probably still would have had to rethink those things. But my point in sharing this one question with you, is that I really think you can do that. I know that there's advice out there that says, well, what if the question was, well, what if it all works out? I've heard that. And I know that that is common advice for all the doom and gloom kind of thinking that we can sometimes be stuck in. But maybe you haven't considered this one, because the idea of, well, what if it doesn't work out? That's what I feel empowered me. And I think it can empower us only because we're staying honest with the part that we don't have any control over. I had no control over how this was going to go. I couldn't beg God and please don't let anything happen to him. I just felt like, I'm always praying over him. I'm always asking for guidance for him to stay alert, all the things that I could think of, but I cannot say, please don't let him die. Because God doesn't let people die, is how I looked at it, If it's his time, it's his time. We just don't know. We didn't know these things. And so my mindset was in a place that just said, if it is to be this way, how am I going to pick up? And I knew that I was going to have to pick up. I knew I will continue on. And facing that was kind of this empowering twist, Facing the what if the worst does happen meant that I was no longer going to rely on things going well in order for me to feel strong. I was actually going to rely on my ability to handle whatever comes. And I was doing that within the mind, heart, spirit circuit of, I knew I was going to be relying heavily on God. I was in prayer even then when I'm mowing the lawn, and I'm just, I'm just contemplating. But it really kind of just diffused things. It really did. And all I can tell you is if that experience was in me, then I think it can be in others as well. It means that as a faithful person, we're saying, I don't make any bargains with you. I don't believe that you're going to zap my spouse in particular. It's just saying, I know that there are many factors. And if that was how it's going to end up, I don't want to be anticipating it and worrying about it and being in this anxious state. I want to feel that I've accepted that it might happen. So I hope that the idea can somehow resonate with you in a way that is encouraging, that if you have this willingness to say, well, what if the worst does happen? You know, what ends up happening is you can actually say, okay, well, if it does really happen, then you're preparing. And even if it never happens, all the preparation that we do, it helps us to spot areas where we need to plan better, or we need to have boundaries in place, or whatever we need, you know? And I think that is very empowering, because us being willing to face the possibility of the worst has made us pay attention to, okay, well, how will I make it the best, even if the worst happens? And I really think then we are going from not wanting it to happen, almost wanting to stay in denial about it, you know, to actually just being proactively preparing for the most smooth unfolding that we can imagine and that we can participate in. And like I've said before, you know, I really do think that when it comes to adversity, when it comes to challenges in life, it's really about how we meet the challenge. Not whether you could avoid it or not, because sometimes you can't, but how you meet it. And so often when I have made it a point to be proactively preparing to meet it in the best way possible, to say, I've accepted the possibility of the worst case scenario. It has never happened to make me have to go through the worst case scenario so far. And yet it has impacted so much how we have almost smoothly and just in a flow walked through the experience, even though it was a very anxiety-inducing kind of experience. So when your negative thoughts arise, I just want you to pause and ask, well, what if it does happen? And I really hope that you'll anchor into prayer at that time, and to not allow this question to really take you off the deep end. Really, it shouldn't. It's accepting that things happen, and it would not be any of your fault. It would not be the other person's fault. It would be the way life unfolds, and it's a mystery to us all. You won't be able to stop everything. So maybe just asking yourself, well, what if it does happen? Because when you can say that, what if it does happen, you're going to be able to say, okay, well, maybe I can list out the practical things that I would do, actual steps, the support that I might need, the boundaries that I might have to be prepared to put in place, whatever it is. And remind yourself that your empowerment comes from your ability to navigate and not just hope for the best. You're actually reminding yourself of your strength. And that's a great place to stay grounded in. I guess in a way, that's what I feel like the balance journey is. We're seeking that sense of groundedness in that inner stability, steadiness, strength, and potential. So just to recap now, I just want you to remember that true empowerment does come from facing reality, not avoiding it. And if anxiety is caused by your worrying about what you can't control, maybe this question can be of help to you. Maybe it will allow you to make peace with that worst case so that you can take back your power and feel more settled back in yourself. And so now I just want to invite you to share, how do you handle a negative spiral, or, you know, just the way you get all ramped up? How do you handle that? Share it with us in the comments. My way is not the only way. I hope that my way can support someone, because it's definitely helped me. But we'd love to hear from you too, because in all of the ways that we try to bring our faith into the mix and find anxiety relief, we can definitely encourage one another. So I'd love to hear from you. Leave your comment below, and I will see you in the next video.